I trust everyone's doing well on this gorgeous, gorgeous Sunday evening, September 19th, 2021. Welcome to Witness to History. This is our 13th opportunity to get to know and have a wonderful conversation with one of our moorland neighbors right here in Shaker Heights. We usually meet the second Sunday of the month, but since it's Brown season, we're moving the schedule around a little bit for all of you Browns fans. So just hang out with us. Next month, if we do Witness to History, it'll be well into the month. But, you know, of course, Kevin and Lee will keep us posted and we'll know when we can get together for Witness to History. We don't want to miss either the game or Witness to History. So, you know, we will schedule as needed throughout this season. This evening, I have the distinct pleasure of having John Dutton, who everybody knows here as my guest and as our guest. Some of us might think we know John, but just wait until you hear his story. You'll know him much better and appreciate even more about what he does for so many people. He's touched so many lives. I want to say a few thank yous, like I always do, to Kay and to Kevin and Lee Kay, to Colin Compton, to Megan Hayes, who posts our Witness to History interviews on the Shaker website. And it's good for me to look back at those as well. And of course, to everybody who's here, thank you all for joining us this evening. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So I'll give you a little bit of information about how this usually works. Sometimes, I don't want to say all the time, sometimes John and I, or, you know, our guest and I will have a conversation for about 30 minutes. We're not going to do that this time. There's way too much for John to share with us for just to give him 30 minutes. But at a certain point, if you have any interest in posting something in the chat, do that anytime. And I'll keep up with the chat, or others of our hosts will keep up with the chat, and we'll make sure that your comments are comments that I'll mention as the conversation goes on. So hello, John. Hello. You're in a different place tonight. Usually you're just behind the controls.
This is very strange.
Well, thank you for agreeing to be the guest on Witness to History tonight. And the reason I thought about it, I said, wait a minute, John is not a behind the scenes person to me. I mean, if it were not for you, you know, Witness to History would not be possible. You just made it fun. You just make it easy. And now we're going to get to see how it is that you've come to be who you are today. Hello, John. A life of service, a life of teaching in so many different ways. And I'm going to turn it over to you, John. And we're going to start from the question that I usually ask our moorland neighbors. Why did you move to Moorland and when?
In 2010, we moved to Shaker Heights in order to give Josh, my stepson, the opportunity to go to Shaker Heights High School. Danita and I had previously been living on the west side in West Park. And that was the first place we moved in together. And so then we decided in 2010 that we wanted to be Shaker residents, and we fell in love with this house and we fell in love with the neighborhood.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for making that decision. That's so often what people say. They move to Shaker Heights because of the schools, and then you get so much more. You get so much more. So let's start with your story. And I'm going to just turn it over to you, John. I'm just calling this your early years. So take it away. Take it away. Here you are.
This is the baby picture text, right?
Yes.
So there, yep. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, right? So I grew up in Canton, Connecticut. It's about half hour west Hartford. So other towns in the area, Farmington, Avon, Simsbury, if you're at all familiar with that area. It's about equidistant from Boston and New York. So I say that because I grew up a huge sports fan, regardless of the fact that my parents, including my dad, who's in the bottom right here, are not. And so had to make a lot of sports choices, right? Being between Boston and New York, and so I was an only child, so I had a very fortunate upbringing. There is on the bottom left me with my parents.
I love the bow tie. I love the bow tie.
Getting all dressed up for a wedding.
Yes.
And I was really interested in getting involved in all sorts of things. And so one of the very first things that I did that I got involved in was definitely like school plays and stuff like that. So it's hard to tell, but I am front and center, the narrator for this particular play.
Okay.
I think it was in kindergarten.
Wow, you knew early. Okay. And we have to just let our audience know that this is just maybe the first of many times that you have been in the theater. So go right ahead.
And so I also got involved in sports, right? Playing sports, not just watching them. And so to this day, if there's any way to compete athletically, I will try to find a way to do it. I have not turned down a lot of opportunities, but I have also not had a lot of opportunities recently. I've been a little bit too busy, but yeah, I just love sports. Also involved in Boy Scouts. I'm in the upper left corner there.
Okay.
Yep.
And when yeah, these pictures are awesome.
So go ahead.
I was going to say, when you say sports, and for anybody who knows John, you still, maybe not sport, but we'll talk about you and your bike a little bit later. Okay, go right ahead. Carry on.
It's a very strange interview because I feel like I'm, and so I'm gonna pivot. When I was 14 in high school, was I in high school at the time? I don't know. My mom, who's on here, can tell me whether I was in high school or not. But not quite. Okay. The house that I grew up in, it caught fire, got struck by lightning. And my mom and I had been on vacation in Mexico, along with a friend of mine. And we found out on the last day of the vacation so that we could, my dad wanted us to be able to steel ourselves for that. And we were, it was tough. That was, I think after that, I started to have much less of an attachment to things.
Yeah.
I had a lot of things, I had a lot of stuff, but then when you realize that those aren't important, that you're going to be just fine without the things and the stuff. And also after that, I realized that at the end of the day, I was still very fortunate to have everything that I did. There was no problem. The only living thing that we lost was the cat. And that was hard. That was the hardest part of the whole thing. But to feel that level of gratitude after I was able to process after a few years, to say, you know what, I'm okay. This is okay. This is not, this doesn't define me, but I have a lot to give.
Yes. And one of the things, well, if any of you know anything about witness history, I take these copious notes. So sometimes I come back and repeat what it is. It helped you understand what was important in life. Helped you understand what was important. And when I first saw this picture, I wasn't really sure what I was looking at. And you can read the article. And it's an experience that very few of us have, to lose everything, but not material things. Let me put it that way. Let me be specific, to lose material things. And And so it seems like it could have been a turning point, but you told me there were many, many times in your life, that you could look to that could have informed what you did the rest of your life. And who knows what else you're going to do, because you have a long way to go. All right. And now you're going to tell us a bit more about your theater experiences.
So these were some shows that I was involved in high school. I got involved in some musicals. I was much more involved in choir and singing when I was younger. And then I kind of took a break from a whole lot of things in like junior high school, and then got involved in the performing arts again. And really just, it was a relief, and it was respite, and it was also just a means of expression, and I really enjoyed it. And it's something that I continued to do for a while.
Quite a while, in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I would dare say you still do. Yes, more about your early years.
And so this is me near the end of high school, beginning in college, with that amazing hair.
Yes, great picture.
And my prom, that's my prom picture on the left.
Nice.
My prom date, Melissa. And then also during high school, something I did was I had my own business. And so I had heard that there was this kid down in Texas who was doing something similar, where he was in high school and he was going around showing adults how to use their computers. And I thought, well, I could do that too. And I was partially inspired by the fact that my dad owned his own business at the time, and was like, okay, so, people around me own their own business. This is something that kids do. I would like to do this too. And so I started that in ninth grade, and I just advertised in the local paper, and my parents were complete supporters. They shuttled me around to most of these appointments. Sometimes if I knew them, they would, my clients would come pick me up. And some of them were actually within walking distance. So a variety of different ways, or walking or biking distance. So anyway, anyhow that I could get there, I would. And so on the right is my ledger from like the third year of the business.
Did you say you were 14 when you started your business?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. You recognized the need. I mean, what more could you do? I mean, so many people, even to this day, people still struggle with using the computer.
Yes.
So for you to recognize that, and knowing young people, at that time or at any time, know so much more than many of the rest of us. But when I looked at your log book, that really struck me, just how meticulous you were about everything. And I'm sure, it connected with how much people paid you.
Yeah. I think towards the end of it, I was charging $14 an hour, which now I realize I was like totally underselling myself. But, in high school, you don't really know what you're worth. So, but I did have quite a few people who I was able to keep up with for a few years. And a couple of them became friends, and it was interesting. I experienced kind of the gamut of business ownership. Even in the last year, I had to file taxes. I did file taxes. I don't know whether I had to,
Okay.
But I did. I wanted to be legal. I wanted to make sure I wasn't,
making a decent amount of money, for sure.
Yeah.
What it is that we find young people do today. There are people who feel like they can be entrepreneurs, and there are some people who really do it right. So what do we have here? Yes, wow, and still helping people, yes, with their computers. Thank you, Mia. And so we're going to move into another aspect of your life at this particular point. And as we came together initially, you had everything categorized. So I'm still following many of those categories. So we'll go into your ancestors.
So this
Well,
is, no, go ahead.
now, when I saw this picture, I was like, is that John? The resemblance is really amazing. Go right ahead. Go right ahead. Tell us who this is.
This is my grandfather, my mother's father, and he was a photographer. So I put up a couple of his pictures that he shot in Mexico. But he was, yeah, he was an incredibly skilled photographer, and that's my mother's, my mom with her parents, and then this is some conference. My mother is a retired business analyst.
Mother
and
is
so
Mrs. Dutton. I think she's, yes, I'm sure she'll chime in. Go right ahead.
Oh, just was going to say this, these are my parents,
Mhm.
and that's me in high school. Not sure how that got in there, but yes.
oh, well, you know, I'm not going to be the only one embarrassed here.
Yeah, I know. I can
That
tell.
has a lot of pictures. He has a lot of pictures.
Well, I do.
That's great.
And so then this is my grandfather. So my father's father, who I didn't know. He passed before I had the opportunity, but he was a Hollywood music producer.
Mhm.
Oh,
so wow.
So he, that's the glam shots with him and the Ray dolls. And so my grandmother, who passed just a couple of years ago, she's in the middle on the picture on the left, and also outside the car on the right. She was an organist. She started playing the organ and piano very early. At 16, she was on a calliope playing the organ. And so she traveled the world playing organ with all sorts of orchestras and in all of these magnificent settings. And so I think a lot of the travel bug kind of came from both sides, really, because, you know, my grandfather was also a traveler on my mother's side, and so yeah, up until my grandmother was 103, she was still playing.
Yes, wow, just amazing. Wow, here we are.
So yeah, she was living out in Northern California, and was directing a bell choir, and performed her own 100th birthday celebration, and
That's
really
wonderful.
Really incredible stuff.
To live such a long, wonderful life. Look at her. She's 102 in that picture.
Yeah, she was 102 in that picture.
You got it from everywhere. In terms of theater, music, all of your business, everything. All right. Now, who do we have here?
Oh, this is my grandmother and my father with me on my graduation from Case. Yep, I graduated Case in 2002 with biology and computer science. And so that kind of set me up for teaching.
Okay. And tell us about your college experience. Tell us about your college experience. So that's how Cleveland comes into your story.
Yeah, I wanted to get out of Connecticut. I actually, when I did my college search, I explicitly drew a circle around Connecticut, and I said, I am going to go at least 500 miles away. Nothing within this circle is something that I want to be. And so when we visited Case, we just fell in love with Cleveland. It was like, Cleveland is this, you know, Cleveland is, people are friendly. There's stuff to do here. It's relaxed. This is great. Yes, I absolutely want to come to Case. And there was a lot of opportunities. Like not only in the science field that I knew I was going to pursue science of some sort, but also in the performing arts. And so, having both of those things in the same place was very attractive.
The best location in the nation. And interesting that, from Connecticut to Ohio, to Northeastern Ohio, we're the Western Reserve. So we were always connected with Connecticut.
Yep.
So, it's not surprising that you ended up here.
Due
Right?
west.
Yes. So your theatrical career continues.
Yes. So the upper left is a dance program that I was involved in. The bottom left is I was in the Glee Club, and I was also in university choir for a minute, and then some straight plays and some musicals. And then the bottom right is the one that I directed my senior year. So getting into directing for the first time, and I fell in love with it. It was a lot of fun to be able to share the things that I had learned and to actually see the big picture, very much in a way that teachers do, right? And so that was another foray into education in a way.
So did you have an idea? Okay, what was your plan? So you said you were biology and computer science major, minored in theater. What did you expect after graduation?
I had no idea. But I did set myself an ultimatum, and I said, when I graduate, I was going to do one of three things. I was either going to hike the Appalachian Trail.
Okay.
I was going to join Greenpeace, or I was going to join the Peace Corps.
Okay.
And I was at a college fair, and Peace Corps had a booth set up. It was a career fair, sorry. It was a career fair at college, and Peace Corps had a booth set up. And after I had already pretended to sell my soul several times to some corporations, because I knew I at some point needed to pay the bills, I stumbled upon the Peace Corps booth, and I said, I've been looking for you all day and just didn't know it. And so that led me to Mozambique.
Yes, tell us this story. Wow.
So,
first of all, we have to have, people who are interested and then dare to be a part of the Peace Corps, because it's a real commitment for quite a while.
It's a 2+ year commitment.
Yeah.
There's about 3 months of training and then 2 years of service. So on the left is my host family, at the home that I was staying in, and they were showing off their mango tree. And then on the right is that was from our, I forget what it's called, but basically when they make you officially a volunteer at the end of training, they have a big party. And they had told us before we left that you need to make sure that you have some sort of formal outfit, because they knew that we were going to have this ceremony. And so because I had purchased a tux for the show I directed, I was like, I'll just bring I won't bring the coat, but I'll bring the tux shirt and the bow tie. That'll be nice and formal. And I actually had a local tailor make me this cummerbund that I'm wearing. So it's a local fabric. And then I realized that once I was there, that I was dressed exactly like the wait staff. So I asked the wait staff to borrow the tray real quick so I could get a picture. And that's one of the volunteers, the other volunteers who I'm serving.
That's great.
So then this is my homestay. That's my host mom, and cooking in the kitchen. It's an outdoor kitchen surrounded by bamboo. And I think at that point she's making some French fries. Every morning she'd make me before training. She was a great mom, great host mom. She'd make me a French fry and fried egg sandwich, and make sure to send me along with it.
Okay.
So as I was walking, as I was walking to work, I got to eat my French fry and fried egg sandwich. And then the picture on the right, that's me, if you can't tell, in the middle. And I'm holding a baby very, very delicately. Well, I'm holding on for dear life, because at that point, you know, I didn't have a lot of experience with babies. I still don't have a lot of experience with babies. And that was the neighbor baby. And because my arrival coincided with the neighbor baby's birth, then they named the neighbor baby João, which is the Portuguese version of John.
Oh my goodness.
And so that is my Shara. Shara is Portuguese for namesake. Which when I realized, because they speak Portuguese in Mozambique, I didn't. And so as I was learning, I was in Homestay, and so there was a lot of very fractured conversations and pointing to things and trying to figure things out. I didn't understand at first, and then once I figured it out, then I was incredibly flattered. But of course, I didn't know how to express that just yet in anything else other than body language. So
yes, I want to ask this question, still posed here. Did you visit historical sites in Mozambique?
Unfortunately, there aren't very many left, because Mozambique was racked by revolutionary and then civil war for the better part of 3 decades. And so they are just now kind of recreating or unearthing a lot of those sites, game parks, and other places as the economy fairly stabilizes. I was able to visit some historical sites in Zimbabwe, which is probably an entirely different interview and story, because at the time Zimbabwe was going through hyperinflation, and they had kicked out all the white farmers, and they weren't allowing any journalists into the country. And so tourism was frowned upon by the State Department at the time. But I still had an inn. I knew someone at the gate. And so at the end of my service, because I knew I wasn't going to be able to travel to Zimbabwe under my Peace Corps passport, I would get into trouble. But once I was back on my personal passport, then I was able to visit my friend there for a couple weeks. And I was followed by the secret police the whole time. And I just made sure to not show anyone that I had a camera. So when I took pictures, and I have very few pictures from the Great Zimbabwe, but when I took pictures, it was always in the context of being a tourist, and could not be misconceived as being a journalist. I was journaling the whole time, but I never told anyone who I was staying with that I was journaling, because they could have gotten into trouble after I left. But I was able to visit the Great Zimbabwe and Harare. Harare is just this incredible city. At one point, it was the Paris of Africa, and it truly it was. You can tell by the bones. All right, but the Great Zimbabwe was absolutely amazing. And I didn't go to Victoria Falls. That's always the question that people ask when they're familiar with that part of the world. I didn't make it that far north. Someday.
Now, one thing I want to say about the Peace Corps, we always think of it as an opportunity for young people to volunteer for the Peace Corps, but the age, I don't even know if there is an age limit. You know,
there is not.
Okay, I know, yes. And there are many people encouraged, so listen out, folks. It's never too late.
I had colleagues who were in their 70s. And they did just fine. I mean, because you have to pass a medical clearance. There's a lot you have to get through. The application process is pretty rigorous as far as your medical health and everything else. So
we have many more pictures of Mozambique.
Yeah, so this is in and around Mozambique. Some of these are from the city that I was in for 2 years, where I taught. And I think people are surprised by the mix of what looks like antiquity and modernity. Can I say modernity? Things that are modern and things that are old, right? There was a gas station in town, and it looked like most other gas.
Sure.
This was in like 2003. We had an internet cafe. And so there was a lot. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Am I back? All right.
Yes, you're fine.
So there was quite a bit that just kind of, it felt anachronistic. If you didn't know, if you had no idea what to expect. And so we were lucky, and the house that I stayed in, which I have pictures of in just a moment here, that we had power most of the time. We also had water most of the time, but if it was a super hot day, then we would have power for maybe we would have water for about half the day and maybe power for half the day.
And that happened
But
in many places across Africa.
yeah, that was still a lot better than a lot of our colleagues. So I felt pretty lucky about that.
I want to just say this comment that Cheryl Bobo has here: the Peace Corps takes people at any age, ?
Yes.
That's inviting. Yes, glad we included that information.
Yes.
And I want to watch our time. So
this is my neighbor selling tomatoes in her front yard on the left. And then on the upper right, that's me with Donna Flora, who was one of the vendors at the formal market in town. And so I'd go to her all the time, a couple times a week, easily, to get some veggies. And so, she became part of my family there. And then in the bottom right is a choir that I sang with. And so we learned some songs in a mixture of different languages, including local dialect and Portuguese. So that was a very quick tutorial in local language. And
I want to interject this question, and
Yeah.
we're going to get to this answer. We're going to get to this answer from Antoinette Grayson. What was your job? Okay, so John's going to talk about that.
Yeah, I taught biology in Portuguese to 8th through 10th graders the first year. I had about 400 students the first year. And then the second year, I taught biology and chemistry and a little bit of English on the side, kind of like English as a second language, for a lot of the folks who, even though I had English instruction in school, they wanted extra English instruction. And so formed I don't know how sustainable it was, but tried to get a little English school going with some of the local folks who were proficient in English, and we had a nominal fee for enrolling, because if there were no fee, then it would be problematic. But it was enough to make sure that there wasn't going to be problems with the schools, essentially. And then, so these are the neighborhood kids. That was my favorite part of Mozambique. Was just like that's how you learn language, is from the kids when you're in a different spot, because they're learning it and they're picking up things so much faster than you are. But you can also ask, and there's no judgment.
Right.
And so, like,
Yes.
what's this? What do I call this? And they know what you're talking about. This is how you say it, and they'll slow it down, because the kids were also learning Portuguese in school, because that was not their first language. So it was, I was on their level, like first and second grade. I could be like, yes, I'm about where you are right now. And so this is inside my house. So the bathroom, this is the bathroom. This is the kitchen. It was, yes, it was as dirty as it looks. And the hot plate, I think we actually had no independent control over the hot plate. We just had to plug it and unplug it in order to turn it on and off. And we didn't have a refrigerator, but eventually we did score a deep freezer. So we definitely had to go to the supermarket on a regular basis. And the deep freezer basically acted as a fridge, because it never got cold enough. And this is what it looked like from the outside. Tin roof, which is really wonderful for 100-degree days. And this is the living room, where I spent a lot of time grading. This is the backyard. Go ahead.
I'll let you know, John. We have a little bit more than 20 minutes left.
Okay. This is the backyard. And this is the wash basin where I started doing my laundry. And then I hired someone to do my laundry after I was told that it was rude to be doing my own laundry because I was a teacher and teachers don't do their own laundry.
Okay. And your mother says, and you did bucket baths.
Yes. In the homestay, I did bucket baths, but we did have, there is a little bit of a shower there, but if we didn't have the water pressure, then it was a bucket bath, which was most of the time.
You made me take bucket baths, just so you know.
Hey, she came to Mozambique, and that's what we do.
Oh wow, that's wonderful.
And so this is my school. So there's a couple of my teaching colleagues, science teaching colleagues. These are some of my students. That was the class I was in charge of. And then this was a group that I helped to run. It was a HIV/AIDS group, in order to increase awareness,
Yes.
to basically educate the community, and it started with the kids.
Great. Wonderful.
And then I really quickly put together report cards for the kids because there was nothing that went home. Everything was always posted at school.
Yeah.
So I created, I got the copier up and running. And so then I was like, well, if I get the copier up and running, then I'm going to make copies. And so I made copies of the template for the report cards, and I filled them out for every kid who was in my class that I was in charge of. There were about 50 kids. And then every marking period, I would send them home with their grades and have the parent sign off as best they could, if they could sign, if not, just some mark. And just to show that they had seen the grades.
Wonderful.
And
I mean,
these are some of my colleagues. Yeah.
Using your skills, being able to fix the copier had to be monumental. I mean, that had to have offered opportunities for everybody else around in the school.
Yeah, it was definitely a learning curve, right? I definitely got called in a few times in a panic. Oh no, it's broken. It's never going to work again. And it's paper jam.
Yes.
But like, if you haven't experienced a paper jam, first time I experienced a paper jam, I was like, I have broken it. It's done.
We've all been there.
Yeah. So, but yeah, after that, it was like off and running. And then the copier got moved into the principal's office because too many people were making copies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
A little bit of a control issue there. Well, hopefully, copier. A little bit of a control issue there. Go right ahead. And these are your friends, your Peace Corps friends.
Yep, some of my Peace Corps friends, hanging out in one of the beach cities. There's a lot of beach in Mozambique.
Okay. You're making me feel like I need to get to Mozambique. Let me get to Ghana.
You do.
Okay. I've been, South Africa was the closest I was able to get to Mozambique. All right. So we're going to move into family, travel, marriage. New category here. Yes. We're in Cleveland.
We're back in Cleveland. So I proposed at the West Side Market. These are the Boutros brothers. These are regular veggie vendors, and so I bribed them with a 6-pack of beer and had them help me out with the proposal. And we got married later that month. We already knew we were getting married, but the proposal was really cool. So I get to take credit for that. And so this is on our dance floor in so this is my mother-in-law Ramona, my father-in-law Charles, in her backyard, and in a tent. And we and Josh married us
It's wonderful. Tell
And
us.
we came in on 2 bicycles separately, and then we left on a bicycle lent to us by James and Nozomi.
Nice, nice. How creative. That's wonderful. But tell us, how did you meet Danita?
On the dance floor.
On the dance floor. All right.
Because I worked for Highland Software for about a year. And after I left Highland Software, one of my friends at Highland, he had an extra ticket for the annual Christmas party that was always held at these institutions like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So we ended up meeting on the dance floor.
Great.
At the Christmas party.
Wonderful.
So this is one of our Labor Day parties. This is the family picture.
Nice.
And
at the House of Blues.
yes, at the House of Blues. Sorry, I forgot to mention where it actually was that we met. I'm in so much trouble. So here's the family.
Nice.
And then
Travel.
yep, the bottom right is just from this past summer. We went to the Grand Canyon, and then this is me and Danita at Yosemite in the middle on the left, which is her favorite place, and she's made it into one of my favorite places too. Seattle and Europe. We went to Europe a couple years ago. Italy and France and Iceland.
Taking us around the world.
And weddings. So this is at our friend Davy's wedding. So on the right, so I was in a fraternity when I was at Case. And so these are my fraternity brothers at Davy's wedding. And then on the left, this is from the wedding that I performed just a couple years ago when we went to Iceland. This is my very excellent friend, Eric, and his now wife, Anne-Marie. So I was able to perform their wedding. And we had our family, and we had his family, and we had her family, and it was amazing. The weather was gorgeous. It's really an amazing place.
What a way to start a life together. And I want to go back. You had said Josh married you and Danita.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that story.
Well, he got ordained. He got ordained through the mail.
Oh, okay.
And then we rehearsed for a while. Not too terribly long. I think I was a little concerned that it was like, all right, well, we've kind of run through it a couple of times.
Well, at the end of the day, you were going to be married, whether
at the end of the day, we were going to be married. And so he wrote his piece, and we wrote our pieces, and we didn't all really know what the other of the three of us was going to say until it actually happened, and that was really cool.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, Mel Guentina said, how old was Josh?
He was 18.
He was 18.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe 19.
Okay.
18. I got it.
All righty. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Great. Where are we?
Well, and I bike.
On your bike. As you told me, you do not drive.
No. Well, I mean, if there are other people in the car.
But tell us about your biking. And I think many of us have seen you with your bike.
Yeah. So when I moved to Shaker, I realized I was close enough. I was teaching at Shaw High School at the time, and I realized that I was close enough to be able to bike there every day. And I thought, all right, let's try this.
Some people might not think that was close enough, but go ahead.
still about 6 miles.
Yes.
But I thought, well, let me try it, because prior to that, I had always been taking RTA. So when we lived on the west side, I was taking RTA to to go there. And it was, it took a while. It took about 45 minutes to an hour. And so I thought, well, I can exercise and save some time and all this other stuff. And I learned a lot of lessons that first winter. For example, gloves are necessary far before you think they will be necessary. And ice is a real thing that you have to avoid if you're on a bicycle. Otherwise, you will find yourself on the street. But I learned the hard lessons the hard way. And then I started realizing that it's better to be much more prepared. And James, who's on here, has helped me tremendously throughout this journey of bicycling. And I think I would never give it up at this point. I have to be within range of where I work, where I teach. Yeah.
So, okay, so you bike every day to Campus International?
I do. Yep.
Yes. How far is that?
It's about 5 miles.
Okay, pretty much the same.
5.5, almost the same. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But with the construction, with the opportunity corridor, it's probably longer because I have to go around a lot of that.
Nita says
yeah.
year round.
Year round.
All
yes,
time.
All the time.
Lessons from you here.
Yep.
Tell us about your teaching. You are a teacher at heart.
I am. So I started teaching at Shaw High School in 2006 as a student teacher. And then I stayed there for 10 years, 10 school years. And I was all sorts of things: biology teacher, environmental science teacher, integrated science, and all sorts of other various things. And then in 2017, I moved to Campus International High School, doing a lot of the same. I had started teaching computer science at Shaw, but it was just a couple classes, and I really had to work very hard in order to be able to teach those classes. And then when I came to campus, they made it part of the curriculum so that it wasn't going to be difficult. It was just a track that kids could follow. So now I get to teach a lot more computer science, which is very necessary. I don't like it any more or less than teaching anything else, but kids need it. So, and it prepares them for careers right out of high school.
Oh, absolutely.
So then, going on field trips, I love taking kids anywhere that I can. So doing some field work on the left, and touring some of the Cleveland Botanical Gardens, the Green Corps there. And so
back to the theater.
Started directing.
Theme in your life, whether you're on stage or otherwise.
Yep. So I started directing musicals and plays. And this is a sampling of some of the things that we did. Porgy and Bess was definitely the most ambitious for high school, right? Because it's an opera, essentially. And I did appear on stage at one point because it did call for a white cast member. And so I was like, I looked around, nobody else wanted to do it.
Okay. It must have
been. But I had fun.
Must have been the role that person was portraying.
Yes, it was not a particularly flattering role.
Yes, I can imagine.
But I partnered with the music teacher at the time, and so she would handle the songs. We would typically hire a choreographer, and then I did all the dramaturgy, all the dramatic side of things, the blocking and set design, set building.
Shaw's performances get quite a bit of attention. When they did The Wiz, I think many people came. And
that was the first show that I directed. Yes. And that was it was electric. The atmosphere was incredible.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So then at campus, I've taking the kids to the Wings of Women at Burke Lakefront, and then we went down to the bottom left is when we went to March for Our Lives in Washington, D.C. Three of the teachers, we rented a 15-passenger van. We managed to get permission from about 12 parents that it was okay to take their kids at midnight down to DC, driving through the night, and attend March for Our Lives, and then just drive back. But the experience that they had, experience that I had, was just remarkable. And they continued being activists. That was the first group that we had at campus.
And Danita says, was that a student-led trip?
It was spurred on by students. The students were like, we really want to go to March for Our Lives. And that's when we stepped up and said, well, you can help make that happen. Yeah, it's always better when it comes from students, right? But that group was very active with gun rights and climate change. They walked out during their junior year. They walked out of class, out of school, and I got in serious trouble because I might have mentioned something about there being an event downtown, and all of a sudden half of our students are marching downtown unsupervised.
You were just giving them some information. You didn't necessarily encourage them to go.
I just said this is what's happening.
Yes, current events.
And so then on the right are some trips that we've done more recently with the Regional Sewer District and the Soil and Water Conservation District, just getting the kids outdoors, experiencing the environment.
This is how young people decide what they're going to do in their lives.
Yeah.
I mean, the pivotal experiences they have in high school, very, very often they come to college and they're really clear. And many, many young people are really committed to service and important issues we're dealing with, like climate change. So, this is really just identifying how it is that they get this spark. Go right ahead, John.
The picture in the lower left is from a co-sponsored trip where we just went hiking in the woods, and it's this group that generally tries to get students of color outside, reconnecting with nature, as we know that a lot of our not only students of color but also urban students generally are disconnected from nature, despite the Cleveland Metro Parks, despite all of the parks around. It's just generally not something that they take advantage of. So bridging that gap, getting them involved.
It requires resources. We don't necessarily, other than like in Shaker, we can go to the nature center or whatever. Most places clearly are not within, close distance. You have to think about it. You have to really think about it. But Cleveland is just, an amazing place, with many, many resources. Go right ahead. Yep, go right ahead.
Upper left, some of the students who are seniors this year, they won $1,000 at this event for it was basically a design computer science event where they were creating some solution to a water issue. So it was a nice marriage of computer science and the environment. The upper right is when we, for the first 3 years of the school, we took kids to Michigan for what's called the Global Village. And so that is an opportunity to experience, have a little sample of what life is like, at least living it is like for people around the world. And so I always gave my group the option of they can sleep in the little hut, or we can sleep outside. And they were like, oh, I've seen the hut. I don't want to sleep in the hut. Let's sleep outside. And I was like, just so you know, you're going to get wet. You're going to get wet because there's going to be condensation in the morning. If you're okay with that. And they were like, absolutely. So that's waking up after.
Seal says, I'm sure you've made a huge impact on the students' lives, for sure. Yep. Wanted to make sure you heard that in the chat.
Thank you. And then we took the kids to Mocha So that's what that is in the bottom right.
I still have to get there. You talk about, exploring Cleveland.
Uh-huh.
Mm.
And so this is, I was invited to speak at the first graduation of computer science track students at Shaw High School after I had left Shaw.
Very good.
And I was invited to speak kind of because I had started that program and kind of because I am also the vice president of the Computer Science Teachers Association of Ohio.
Oh, wow.
So in that capacity, I formally, I was making that presentation, but really it was like, hey, Mr. Dutton. And I was like, you guys are great. So that was really rewarding.
Cheering them on.
Something else I did at Shaw was I would let the kid who did the best on their state testing shave my beard and shave my hair. And this all started because I had grown out my hair, much to Janita's chagrin. And so that's what's on the left. And I decided I was gonna, at some point it got long and I was like, I can get it long enough to donate. So when it got long enough to donate, then the kid who did the best on the testing that year, they're back there, they're cutting. And then Shaw has a cosmetology program. So those are the cosmetology students who were making sure that everything was done correctly and bundling all the hair, all that good stuff.
Well, it had many more purposes than just teaching them how to cut hair.
Right.
It meant something to them.
Yep.
And we're coming around the house and bringing us to somewhat the end of your presentation. But I'm glad folks have been chatting with you. Go right ahead. John, you're handy, you offer service, you do computers. Okay, what is it that you don't do? Okay, we won't worry about that. Go right ahead. Tell us about how it is that you're handy around the house.
Oh, this is the basement renovation because our finished basement, it had flooded. And so after it had flooded, what was that? That was when a whole bunch of houses, we had that 100-year storm. It was in 2012. I can even juggle, yes. I think it was in 2012. And then after that, I was like, we really need to fix up. We decided we really needed to fix up that side of the basement. So that was nice. And then I built a potting bench out of some scrap wood that we had around from a variety of different projects. And we actually had a sink that we brought with us from the house that we lived in West Park because they were getting rid of the sink.
I want to read this. No, this is great. Kelly Grigsby says he is so handy and mostly because he's willing to make mistakes and help. All right.
Plenty of mistakes. Yes.
Be right the first time.
Yes.
And that basement closet doesn't exist before he built it. Okay. So letting us know more about your handiwork here.
And then I also am proud of the window seat that we have in the kitchen. That's on the left. And then the garden, so Danita and Josh mostly built the second garden at the top of the screen there on the right. And, but as a family, these are definitely family built gardens. But this is to make sure the groundhogs don't get any of our veggies, because here's the feature though. Here's the feature is that what we did is we laid down that same fencing that's all around. We laid it down on the bottom and then put all the soil on top and all the framing on top. So they are not getting in. Wonderful. We have a compost pile, and the compost pile is a groundhog feeding bin at this point. Need to fix that, but
you have to outsmart them. That's great.
Yep. So they can't come up through the bottom.
Can't come up through the bottom. Nope. Have to think like a groundhog.
And I like to cook, so I like to make bread
too.
And
yeah, I do remember bringing food to our meetings. That we used to have at the community building.
Yeah. Oh, way back in the halcyon days.
Way
back. And so on the right is a Thanksgiving plate or a Christmas plate. That's Christmas, because those are definitely Christmas plates. Okay. And so I'm vegan, and so basically, if I want to have a good dinner, if we want to have a good dinner, then we got to cook it, right? So
Yeah.
I love trying all sorts of different things, all sorts of different techniques. But people look at our plates, the vegan plates at dinner, and they're like, that looks really good. Yeah, you're allowed. Like, you can have it too.
Yes, yes, yes. And this note again from Kelly Griggs, do you see this? And it's talking about all of your work. And it's all designed with the environment in mind. Even though you're keeping out groundhogs, your products are eco-friendly. It all comes together.
Yep.
It all comes together. Who are you, John Dutton? All in one person. You know, so you say that you have a life of service, but you just have expanded so many of your talents, and you're giving to so many people and to the world, you know, taking yourself out of the United States, you know, in the Peace Corps, and offering so much to so many people. And we know that you're just getting started. I can imagine you have a lot more to give. Now we have, of course, you know, if we were watching the clock, we'd be out of time, but it's up to everybody else. Anybody have questions? Anybody want to chime in?
I don't have a question, but I just want to say how much Sam and I have appreciated everything that John has said. And we want to congratulate his mother and his wife and his son for the cooperation that I'm sure they have given. You are certainly an asset to Shaker and to our young people. Thank you so much.
Yes, you all give so much. And Antoinette says here, did you prepare those dishes?
That last picture, yes, almost all of them. I think, you know, it's always a team effort, but typically I have the most kitchen energy. So, so yes, at least partially. Uh-oh, did Donna freeze? So I'll respond to the chat. The Appalachian Trail, I did work on for a couple summers, or for a summer. I spent a couple weeks in high school doing some service on the Appalachian Trail and maintaining it, building rock steps and bog bridges, fun stuff like that. Shooing away the black flies in the presidentials of New Hampshire. Thank you all for being here. This was more fun than I thought it was going to be.
Oh, well, it's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be fun. Like I said at the very beginning, you know, we're going to know so much more about who John Dutton is. Actually, I had mentioned to you, John, when I first started coming to the meetings at the community building, I didn't know, you know how it is. All of us can recall maybe the first time or the first few times we came to the community building for the Moreland Network. And I was like, what is this? I don't understand. And I was like, but one thing I know is that there are these people who are the ones who do the work. And so between John and Danita and Kevin, I was like, okay, I'll figure this out eventually. But I figured that you all were like part of the engine that kept it going. Now I know everybody is part of the engine that keeps it going. But if it were not for your efforts, you know, we wouldn't be here. We are, what, 2021? We're just bigger and continue on. And John and I said, we'll do this a few times, and here we are. But I thought about how it is that we needed to know more about John Dutton. Let's look at some of these comments here. George Eaton says, fantastic, John. How lucky we are to have you in the neighborhood. And Antoinette Grayson, where can I get one like him, Danita? Handyman, chef, gardener, scientist. LOL. That's great. Mia Flower says, that was awesome. What a giving person. And James says, yes, John, such a privilege to know you both. And so, Danita, what is your comment here? See, there are some things I don't understand in
it's a heart.
It's a heart. Okay, see, thank you. Okay, I need that. I need young people around me. And Sil says, we need more teachers like you, John, for sure, for sure. I think every once in a while I say, well, John, I want to learn from you because I know that your students are really engaged and just have a good time, and you also keep them on task.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that most of them aren't having a good time so far yet this year.
Okay.
And we're not at that stage of the year yet. We'll
Okay.
get there.
Okay.
We'll get there.
Now, one point that you made in our conversation was that when you were in Mozambique, you were a vegetarian or vegan.
I was vegetarian in Mozambique. Yeah.
But what happened over time?
Yeah, I lost weight. Yeah. My first year, I lost about 15 pounds. And it was because not like meat was everywhere. It's not like chicken was everywhere, but when it was offered, I was turning it down. And then I just wasn't replacing with enough other food is really what it came down to. And so I just started eating meat again for the second year that I was there. And I kept eating meat for, I don't know, a couple months after I got back into the States. And I said, there's no reason for me to be doing this. It doesn't taste good. It tasted so much better overseas because the chicken was running around, and you would see your dinner before eating it relatively soon. So, there's a lot to be said for our farming industry and how much I disagree with it. And there's also just the quality of the food is vastly reduced. So
it's good to know. And we have here, well, I lost my place. Okay, Monica says, thank you so much, John, for being so selfless. And Antoinette says, thank you, John's mom, for raising such a wonderful son. I think you're muted.
Yes, purposely, because you don't want to hear me sobbing in the background.
Oh,
Thank you.
It was just fascinating. And I have more notes and I had said at the beginning, there are pictures that you all didn't see, many more pictures that you all didn't see, so much more to the story. But I just thoroughly enjoyed going on this journey, with you, John, through your life. And just to know you're my neighbor. That makes it all the better. Are there any questions, comments, or final comments you want to make, John? Anybody want to
thank you so much for being here. Thank you to those of you who saw that fairly last minute email and or message and then came by to hear and see things that I don't typically talk about or share.
All right, so they know a little bit more. So people might be asking you about your handiwork around the house there. All righty. So Witness to History is, again, our opportunity to get to know our moorland neighbors better once a month. And so for anyone who is interested in being a guest on Witness to History, here is my number. Please don't hesitate to give me a call. Actually, it's better to text me, but give me a call. I answer the phone sometimes when I don't recognize the phone number. So 216 number, or even better to send me an email. And so if you're interested in being a guest, like I said, our October Witness to History will be on the 24th is the date that we're looking at now, because we're really trying to work around the Browns games. So there's no end to our Witness to Histories. I would just love to sit down and talk to you and have an opportunity for others in our neighborhood to get to know you as well. So we have another message here from Lee. October will be changed due to the Browns. Yes.
But also before me, Sam wrote that he would love to see more pictures later from.
Okay. Okay. Do you still have those at the end of your presentation, John? Okay. So if anybody wants to hang out, because I was looking at him. I was like, oh, he didn't put his picture in. Okay. All right, everybody. If you can still hang out, please do. And we will have more pictures that John has on his slides.
Apparently.
It's the after party.
This is the after party? Is that what
Party.
this is called?
After party.
Anybody
Yeah.
who wants to hang out is welcome.
I just found out that a paper I'm a co-author on is going to be published in the Canadian Journal of Educational Research,
Oh, okay.
I think next month.
Oh, congratulations.
I saw that. Look, Mom.
Yeah, really? Wow.
What is the paper on, John?
The paper is on storytelling in the science classroom. So,
Really?
so what I've developed a bunch of stories over the years to help kids learn particular concepts in biology or environmental science. So fictional stories, some involving like time travel and that sort of thing. And so I went ahead and did an action research project where I compared the kids who received the stories to the kids who just received the informational text, meaning the textbook, right? And
You froze up.
that I gave them, right? How well they understood the information. And I was very careful to make sure that the same information was available in both the story and the informational text.
Mhm.
And it showed pretty decisively that kids learn better out of the story than out of the informational text, out of the
You don't need
that's
to tell us what the journal is, because they probably have an online version of the article. Okay, great.
they will. Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. And it'll be free.
Mhm.
There we go. The
Dun, dun.
the bangs.
I love the hair here. Mhm.
Yes. Yeah, that was the first time I tried growing out the hair.
Now, you mentioned something about the Appalachian Trail and bird banding.
So yeah, something I did when I was, and again, thank you all so much for being here. This is totally the after party. I do not have any refreshments for you. I apologize.
It's okay.
But you can feel free to go get a glass of whatever you would like from your own dining room or your own kitchen. So the picture on the right is from a part of northwestern Connecticut, right outside the Audubon Society. And so I worked there. I volunteered there in high school for a couple of weeks over the summer to do all sorts of different work, like trail work, because they were building trails within their grounds, and also do some bird banding, which involved going out to a net in the morning, a huge net that was set up, and very carefully extracting birds that had flown into the net in order to make sure that their wings weren't damaged. And then going back to the office and then putting this tiny little metal band on them. And if they were already banded, then recording that information so that we could track any of the migration patterns for the birds and get the overall population.
So John, you were in high school when you were doing this?
Yeah, it was part of a program called Landmark Volunteers, which was really fantastic. I did that for, I want to say 3 or 4 years over the summers.
But they showcase you. You're the one with the newspaper articles.
Yeah. That
Why is
that was the local paper, and that I 99% sure that was all my mom.
Okay.
I don't think I had anything to do with that.
I'm a great mom.
And so yeah, it was a really great opportunity, and that definitely started a love for the environment, just getting out there. And
do you see this question here from Kelly? It says, what got you interested in science as a youth? Any specific kinds of inspiration?
Oh, definitely my science teachers, for sure. I had some pretty fantastic science teachers, and then I don't know. I haven't done the deep dive to figure out what exactly inspired me, but knowing that at least part of it was my teachers, that's fuel for the fire. That's like, oh, that's right. I'm in science because of this, and I have former students come up to me and like, I'm a mechanical engineer now, and I'm a psychologist, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that, and thank you.
Yeah,
And
sure.
that's as any teacher knows, the payoff takes a while, but it's the best thing in the world.
Yes,
Still
indeed.
says, would you start that science program in Cleveland? Still asks that. And Lee says, do you play an instrument?
I used to play the piano a little bit because my dad played the piano. And so that was something that I got into pretty young, but then I then played the flute. So I can still play. I played at my grandmother's memorial service.
Oh, nice. Okay. Right. So you really play.
I did not start the science program in Cleveland. And I can, even without details, I can know that.
Okay.
There's no science program that I'm aware of that I started.
Now, these are pictures your grandfather?
This is my father when he was young.
Your father. Okay.
And
On the
this
left.
is gosh, I want to say like a grandmother or that level of ancestry. And then this is me and some of my grandmother's closest folks to her at her book signing. So she did publish a book, 79 years on the organ bench, a lot of her collected stories, and she was in hospice when the book signing and the book release was scheduled. And so she was in no condition to be able to do the reading. So I stepped in and did the reading when I was out there.
What was the title of your mother's book?
It's called 79 Years on an Organ Bench. And we have several copies if you would like to borrow one or have one.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, and she also wrote regular columns in the local paper about just daily life.
Wow.
This was Whiplash. This is Mozambique, back to Mozambique, where my training site was, and some of the trainers here. Even though most of them could speak English, they were forbidden from doing so. And so when we would have our conversations in English, they would knowingly respond to us in Portuguese, but pretend to not know what we were saying unless we were being inappropriate, because most of us were in our early 20s, and so we were wont to be inappropriate.
How long did it take you to feel confident with the language?
Confident enough. I would say after about 6 months, I felt confident enough to be able to walk into my classroom and not have to constantly read off the script that I had prepared.
Okay.
And by year 2, I was definitely confident enough to already have the lesson plan in my head and not have to have very much written down at all. And I was totally conversational at that point.
I just add something there. There was also your dictionary of Shangana that you developed, which was the local language.
Yeah, so I did try to learn the local language, and I did a decent job in kind of the basics. And I've always been interested in linguistics, so an easy way for me to try to learn the language a little bit better was that I developed a reference for folks to be able to see the orthography, how things were spelled in Shangana, because it's not typically a written language, being one of many African dialects that has been excluded from schools, as opposed to being included from schools, and so that people can understand how their own grammatical structure that they're using without thinking about it, be able to apply it to a separate language. One of those colonialist attitudes of, you shouldn't be speaking that language, you should be speaking ours. So I tried to develop, a better reference for people that was a little bit more approachable.
And you see Danita's note, John also speaks several languages, at least enough to have basic conversations in those. What other languages do you speak?
Spanish, French, and when we traveled to Italy at the time, I was decent enough in Italian to be able to, get around and have basic conversations and throw other languages at people, and it was close enough in that language to.
Okay, and those languages are relatively similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get really confused sometimes, and I'll thank someone in French after
Right.
having spoken to them in Spanish. Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, several. Mhm.
Okay. You see Kevin's question, in what ways were your students in Mozambique different from your students in the United States?
The system itself, well, kids chose to come to school. School is not mandatory.
Mm.
So and kids had to pay. Even though it was a public school, you still had to pay. So the how much they valued coming to school and education was different because of that intrinsic motivation that already existed. But regardless, sometimes the parents are just like, no, you're going to school. This is what you're going to do. And so a lot of the kids are kids anywhere who are like, I don't want to be here. But a lot of it was systemic. A lot of the differences were systemic. Like you didn't pass on to the next grade until you actually showed competency. So when I taught 8th through 10th graders, actually I had night school where I was teaching 11th and 12th graders who were in their 30s and 40s and 50s. And it wasn't just that they were returning to school after a long time. A lot of them had been working at it for a long time, and just, it would take them 5 or 6 years to move on to this next level. They were working during the day, so they were taking night school. But it just, this idea that you don't pass on to the next level until you have that competency, it creates a different social structure. The students were
to South Africa. I mean, the students' motivation to come to school was very different from the United States. And our students, when we traveled there, they recognized that as well.
So I'm seeing Antoinette's question about the students being more disciplined and respectful. I don't think so. And it's weird because on the surface, if you just visit or you were just there for a few months, you would think so. Because they stand up when you walk in the room, they ask how you're doing, and they won't sit down until you tell them you can sit down. That's an outward sign of respect that you have no choice about because everyone's doing it, right? It's not that you've necessarily internalized that as respect. And so I ran up against a lot of the same problems that I ran up against in the States with disrespectful kids. They just do it within a different system because they're still rebelling against a system. They're still testing boundaries because they're still kids. I think that was probably one of the most universal things, is that, students all wrote everything down in their little notebook because that's what you did as a student. You didn't necessarily understand more because you wrote it all down in the book, but everyone had their notebooks. And so from an observer's perspective, you would say, oh, well, the students are more self-disciplined because everyone has their notebooks. But that's what everyone did. And I don't know that there was a very tangible difference when it comes to having more discipline or respect on one side or the other.
I like that.
Some more Mozambique pictures. There's a labor. This is a labor parade, basically a workers' day parade. Asking for appropriate salaries.
You see Kelly's note, what kinds of food did you eat in Mozambique and what beverages?
There were 2 beers. You could go to any bar and you would be given the choice. Do you want the light beer or the dark beer? And so I definitely like the dark beer more than the light beer. Being mostly silly because Mozambique wasn't a huge beer drinking country, but that's what was there. And then as far as food was concerned, a lot of cassava, both the root and the leaves, a lot of sweet potato, a lot of rice, a lot of coconut, A lot of peanut was used in cooking. There a lot of leaves, a lot of different leaves to round things out. You know, your standards, your tomatoes, your onion, your garlic, your bell pepper. A lot of those were imported by the Portuguese, of course, but they became a part of Mozambican cuisine. Some spicy stuff, piri piri. Piri piri is also in South Africa, in case you've ever seen that. Yeah, the green bean dish. It's basically onion, garlic, tomato, green beans over coconut rice. So actually taking the coconut milk and cooking the rice in the coconut milk. And there's nothing like fresh coconut milk. And I do not have the appropriate tool at home to be able to make that. But in Mozambique, there's basically this little stool that you sit on, and it's called a rolador. And it's got this spiky end to it, like that. And you have the coconut, and then you scrape off the insides of the coconut on this thing. It takes a good long while to get all the insides of the coconut out. And then you soak it. And so you take all of that coconut juice, and then you cook your rice in it. And it's really yummy. Lots of fresh fruit too, mangoes, papayas, lychee fruit.
You see Antoinette's note there? I still like the student standing when I entered the room when in Uganda.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. See, I found Kelly's picture. There you go. You didn't know you were going to be in this. Is she still here? Oh yeah. There you go.
Overall, do you feel that you were able to attain your goals with the students? Goals that you anticipated?
In Mozambique?
Yes.
You know, I leave it up to Ms. Hooper to really stump me, because you know, you with your experience in the classroom, you know what the heart of it is.
Oh, yeah.
Selfishly, I gained so much. I probably gained so much more than they did, unfortunately, right? Because I was still learning. I was learning how to be a teacher at the same time as I was learning to be overseas, at the same time as learning a different culture, and at the same time as I was learning a language. So all of those things together didn't make for a really great teacher, right? Because you only really hit your stride after about 5 years. And so you don't really know what you're doing and how to reach the students until that time. So I hope I had an impact. Well, I know I had an impact. I hope it was positive. I hope it was helpful as far as like their overall education is concerned. And
considering what we've seen and heard, I'm sure that you did a lot more than you feel that you were able to do. It's wonderful. I'm glad you had that experience.
I value it every single day, and I would do it over again.
Good. That's it. It's great.
Yeah, we saw that one. Okay.
Right.
Now we're just going. Oh, so my colleagues at Shaw.
Oh, that's nice.
There's a performing arts group that I was involved with for a few years called People International. We did got together for a week and did performances at the end of the week
I see.
for a couple summers.
That's the one that started as Up With People, right?
Yes, Sing Outs and Up With People. Up With People was tangentially involved, but then all the Sing Outs all around the country kind of coalesced into this group. Doing shows for charity on an annual basis. I was also into journalism for a while.
Yes.
So these are some. I edited the high school paper for a year, and I wrote a couple articles in high school and in college.
He was more than ready
I-
to be a teacher.
A little bit of, lessons from so many people in your family. It's like, well, maybe I'll do this, right?
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. I
Nice.
had a good time.
What was
I had
that?
a
What
good
was
time.
that?
Yeah, go back with that picture where you look like you're,
Oh, this one?
yeah, right. That's a great picture.
So this is one of my students. She's a senior right now. She decided to, for Halloween, dress up as me. So she came in dressed like this, and I, of course, I wasn't wearing my helmet at the time, but I went and got my helmet so that we could get pictures together.
Okay.
That's great.
And so this is my physics classroom. A couple pictures of my physics classroom. Here we are doing a board meeting where it's literal boards, and we sit around and the kids demonstrate what they did in the particular experiment, and they talk about what they would change. And if James is still on here, he might recognize some of that inspiration.
Mhm.
And I think that's really important too, is that like in having a lot of travels and a lot of experiences, I have been able to get a lot of ideas and experiences from other people and incorporate them into my own life. And that has been obviously very enriching.
Great.
Okay, so I think we're done. Oh, you
Yeah.
probably want me to talk about that, don't you?
Yes, I do. I was gonna, interject that while you were talking, but I'm glad you came back to it now.
So that's the vest I wore for my wedding.
Mm.
Oh,
And so it's a Zimbabwean fabric that I brought back, and I made the vest. And so the buttons are little animal buttons because I just thought it was cute, like having little animal buttons. And I learned the hard way about how to make an actual buttonhole.
wow. Unique, isn't it?
So are
I-
you saying, John, with all of your childhood experiences, you missed 4-H and didn't do sewing?
So I did
Nope.
home ec. No, I
Nothing
did.
in Boy Scouts? Okay.
No, home ec. We totally learned how to sew in home ec.
He didn't know that the sewing machine has a buttonhole feature,
Didn't
so
need
he
a
did
key.
it by hand.
We had that conversation. I was like, well, the sewing machine will do that for you.
I was staring at the sewing machine probably right
That is-
immediately after I finished the buttonholes. And I was like, huh, that feature right there looks awfully like it might, oh well, too late now.
Yeah, yes,
It
yes.
took forever.
Well, yes, that's why you can do it on the machine now.
And that's why they built it in, exactly, Donna. That's why they built it into a sewing machine. Yeah.
And so when we talk about learning lessons the hard way, making mistakes, I don't mind those because now I know and I did it the hard way. No
Nice.
skin off my back.
This is just such a wonderful story, John.
Yes, it is.
The life is just great. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for going through the additional pictures because I was like, wait a minute, we didn't talk about this, that, and the other. That's nice. That's so nice. Well, for anybody who missed this wonderful conversation, John takes time. I don't know how you find time, but anyway, John takes time to put this on YouTube and then send it to the library. And it's just wonderful. Just, one interview after the other. So if you ever want to look at the interviews, you can just take your time to learn more about our moreland neighbors. And, it's just so great that our library, sees the significance of this. I can imagine. I mean, and because it's all digital, it will be around forever. So this primary sources, I mean, the history that people can tell from the stories of people that they may or may not know is just so valuable, so valuable. So I really thank any and all of you who are willing to participate in Witness to History. It's so much. And I always have to say that I feel like I get the most. I have the notes. Because the conversations that we have in preparation for this are so rich. and it really enriches me. I thank you so much. Thank
And
you.
I have to say that being the assistant producer, I don't know, but being
Oh.
being a co-producer and
Yeah.
being in on these conversations that happen beforehand is really a privilege as well. Like hearing all of these things about folks that, you know, don't make it to air, right? But those conversations are truly rich and amazing. Yeah.
What's the chance of you and Monica getting together and putting on a theatrical presentation? Monica Boone?
She and I'll let her speak on that if she's still here.
Yes, I'm still here.
Yeah.
Yes, we talked about it. And that's definitely something that's in the wind for the future. We're just navigating the current situation and restrictions and just trying to come up with that stellar idea.
Mhm.
Great, great.
Two of you.
For those of us who've been inspired by this talk and want to dress up as John for Halloween, where can you get the costume?
What? I'm sorry. What was the last thing? What'd you say? Where can we get the?
Where can we get the costume, or do we have to make our own?
You got to make it yourself. If there's nothing else I've communicated, is that you can do it yourself.
That would be too funny for neighbor night on Halloween.
Yeah,
Everybody should come as John Dutton.
Oh, that's great. Thank you all. Thank you so much. This was absolutely wonderful.
Thank you. And thanks, John, for agreeing to do this conversation. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It can fade into the back now, right?
Yes.